Someone walks into a room and makes a comment about your clothes, your work, or your choices. Within seconds, you feel something shift inside. Your chest tightens, your face gets warm. You suddenly become aware of every person watching. That feeling, that sharp sting of embarrassment mixed with anger, that's shame. And some people know exactly how to use it against you. They've turned it into a weapon, and they wield it with precision. But what if you could take that weapon, understand its mechanics, and render it completely powerless? What if you could not just defend yourself, but flip the entire situation to expose the person trying to shame you? The psychology behind shame runs deeper than most people realize. It's not just about feeling bad or embarrassed. Shame operates at the core of how we see ourselves and how we believe others see us. Psychologist Brené Brown spent years studying shame and described it as the intensely painful feeling that we are flawed and therefore unworthy of love and belonging. Notice those words, unworthy. That's the real damage. Shame doesn't just make you feel bad about something you did, it makes you question your entire value as a person. If you're new to this channel, please subscribe to help us grow and spread knowledge to others. Now, let's dive into the hidden blueprint that's been running your life. Now, imagine someone who understands this power, someone who knows that one well-placed comment in front of others can make you doubt yourself for days. These people exist everywhere, in your workplace, in your family, in your social circles. They've learned, either instinctively or deliberately, that shame is one of the fastest ways to control another human being. When you shame someone publicly, you're not just criticizing them, you're attempting to lower their social status, to make others see them as less valuable, less competent, less worthy. The Machiavellian approach to dealing with shamers starts with a fundamental understanding. Niccolò Machiavelli, the Renaissance philosopher, wrote extensively about power dynamics and human nature. One of his core insights was that appearing weak invites attack, while demonstrating strength creates hesitation in your opponents. When someone shames you and you react with obvious hurt, embarrassment, or defensive anger, you've just confirmed their power over you. You've shown everyone watching that their words can wound you, and that invitation will be accepted again and again. But there's something most people don't understand about shame. It only works when you accept the frame. Let me explain what that means. When someone tries to shame you about your appearance, your work, or your choices, they're creating a frame, a way of looking at the situation where you are below them and their judgment matters. The moment you feel shame, you've stepped into their frame. You've agreed, at least emotionally, that their judgment has weight and that you need to defend yourself within their framework. Social psychologist Leon Festinger developed cognitive dissonance theory, which helps explain why this matters. When someone shames you, they're trying to create dissonance between your self-image and the image they're projecting onto you. The natural response is to reduce that dissonance by either changing your self-image or by defending yourself. Both of these reactions keep you trapped in their frame. The Machiavellian response? Reject the frame entirely. Let's look at how this actually works. Someone at a meeting says something like, "I'm surprised you thought that approach would work. Did you even think it through?" They're trying to shame your competence in front of colleagues. The instinctive response is to explain your thinking, to justify your approach, to prove you did think it through. But every word of that explanation is you accepting that you're on trial and they're the judge. Instead, a Machiavellian response might look like this. Pause. Let the silence sit for a moment. Then calmly say, "That's an interesting observation. What specific part concerned you?" You've just done something powerful. You didn't accept their frame. You didn't get defensive. You turned the spotlight back on them and made them explain themselves. Now they have to articulate a specific critique instead of throwing a vague insult. And often, they can't. The shame attempt was empty, designed to wound rather than to contribute. Psychologist Albert Ellis, who developed rational emotive behavior therapy, emphasized that our emotional responses come not from events themselves, but from our beliefs about those events. When someone tries to shame you, the shame you feel comes from your belief that their judgment matters and that their assessment might be true. Ellis taught that we can challenge these beliefs directly. Do you actually value this person's opinion? Is their judgment based on expertise, or just a desire to elevate themselves? Are they qualified to assess you? Another layer of Machiavellian thinking involves understanding why people shame others. Dr. Jun Tangney, a researcher who has studied shame extensively, found that people who frequently shame others often have their own deep wells of shame. They project it outward to avoid feeling it themselves. When someone tries to shame you, there's a good chance they're revealing their own insecurity, their own fear of being seen as inadequate. This knowledge becomes a tool. Imagine someone mocks your career choices in front of friends. A defensive response might be explaining why your career is actually good, listing your achievements, getting visibly upset. That's playing by their rules. A Machiavellian approach recognizes what's really happening. This person feels threatened by your choices, or they're insecure about their own path, or they need to put someone down to feel elevated. So instead of defending your choices, you might respond with genuine curiosity. You seem pretty invested in my career decisions. Why is that? Suddenly, they're the one who has to explain themselves. You've shifted from being interrogated to being the interrogator. The concept of emotional jujitsu applies perfectly here. In jujitsu, you use your opponent's force and momentum against them. You don't meet force with force, you redirect it. When someone launches a shame attack, they're using energy and aggression. The instinct is to push back with equal energy, getting angry or defensive. But that's exhausting, and it often makes you look worse. Instead, you step aside and let their aggression go past you, or you redirect it back at them. Carl Jung, the influential psychiatrist, talked about the shadow, the parts of ourselves we don't want to acknowledge. He noted that what we criticize most harshly in others is often what we can't accept in ourselves. When someone shames you, they might be shadow projecting, attacking in you what they fear in themselves. If someone shames you for being too ambitious, there's a good chance they're wrestling with their own suppressed ambitions. If they shame you for being emotional, they probably struggle with their own feelings. Once you understand this pattern, you gain a kind of X-ray vision into human behavior. Every shame attack becomes transparent. You can see right through to the insecurity driving it, and that knowledge makes you nearly immune to the attack itself. It's hard to feel ashamed when you can clearly see that the attack has nothing to do with you and everything to do with the attacker's internal struggles. Now let's talk about the actual destruction part, because that's what draws people to Machiavellian tactics. When you destroy someone who shames you, you're not necessarily being cruel or aggressive. In the Machiavellian sense, destruction often means exposing, deflating, or rendering powerless. It means ensuring they won't try again, and others won't follow their lead. One powerful method is the Socratic approach. When someone shames you, ask them questions. Keep asking questions. Make them explain and justify their position. What makes you say that? Can you elaborate on what you mean? What would you suggest instead? Done calmly and genuinely, this approach has multiple effects. First, it forces them to think more deeply about an attack they likely threw out without much thought. Second, it often reveals that their shame attack has no substance behind it. Third, it makes them uncomfortable because the spotlight is now fully on them. And fourth, it demonstrates to everyone watching that you're composed, rational, and willing to engage, while they're the one making shallow attacks. Psychologist Harriet Lerner, who wrote extensively about anger in relationships, observed that people who shame others are usually trying to discharge their own uncomfortable feelings. By staying calm and asking questions, you refuse to absorb those feelings. You essentially hand them back. The shamer came to make you feel small, but now they're the one feeling scrutinized and exposed. Another Machiavellian tactic involves strategic vulnerability. This sounds counterintuitive, but stay with me. When someone tries to shame you about something, sometimes the most powerful response is to own it completely and remove its power. Let's say someone tries to shame you about a mistake you made at work. Wow, that was a pretty big error on your part. The defensive response is to minimize it, make excuses, redirect blame. The Machiavellian response might be to say, "You're absolutely right. That was a significant mistake. I've already identified what went wrong and implemented 3 changes to prevent it from happening again." What did you just do? You acknowledged the truth, which immediately removes the shame weapon from their hand. You can't shame someone who isn't ashamed. Then you demonstrated competence by showing you've already addressed the issue. The person trying to shame you now has nowhere to go. They can't escalate because you've agreed with the factual part while refusing to accept the emotional shame they were trying to impose. This is what Brené Brown calls shame resilience, the ability to recognize shame when it's happening and refuse to let it define you. The concept of frame control appears throughout Machiavellian strategy. Robert Greene, author of The 48 Laws of Power, describes multiple ways to maintain frame control in social situations. When someone tries to shame you, they're attempting to control the frame, to define reality in a way that places you beneath them. Your job is to either maintain your own frame or shatter theirs entirely. One way to shatter someone's frame is through unexpected positivity. If someone makes a sarcastic comment designed to shame you, you can respond as if it was genuine and kind. "Oh, thank you for noticing," said with complete sincerity to a clearly sarcastic remark, completely deflates the attack. The shamer was expecting hurt or anger. They get neither. They get confusion and the uncomfortable realization that their weapon didn't work. Now we need to address something important. The Machiavellian approach to handling shame isn't about becoming cold, manipulative, or cruel. It's about understanding power dynamics and refusing to be controlled by emotional manipulation. Machiavelli himself was often misunderstood. His writings were descriptive, explaining how power actually works, not necessarily prescriptive, telling you to be ruthless. The tactics we're discussing are defensive and exposing in nature, not aggressive or harmful. Dr. Martha Stout, who wrote The Sociopath Next Door, makes a crucial distinction between defending yourself against manipulation and becoming a manipulator yourself. The tactics described here are about maintaining your dignity and boundaries, not about attacking others unprovoked. You're not initiating shame attacks, you're neutralizing them when they come your way. Let me give you a real-world framework for responding to shame attacks. First, pause. That brief moment before responding is where your power lives. In that pause, you're checking your emotional response, understanding what's happening, and choosing your reaction rather than having it chosen for you. Viktor Frankl, the psychiatrist who survived concentration camps, wrote that between stimulus and response, there is a space, and in that space is our power to choose our response. Second, categorize the attack. Is this person someone whose opinion actually matters to you? Are they speaking from expertise or from insecurity? Is there any legitimate feedback hidden in the shame attempt? Not all criticism is shame, and not all shame attempts are completely without basis. The Machiavellian isn't blindly defensive. They're discerning. Third, choose your strategy based on the situation. In front of a group, you might use questions to expose the emptiness of the attack. In a one-on-one situation, you might address it more directly. "I notice you often make comments about my choices. What's going on there?" If the shamer is someone with no real connection to your life, you might choose the ultimate power move, complete indifference. No reaction at all. Just a slight smile and moving on with your day. Nothing destroys a shame attack faster than obvious indifference. Fourth, observe the aftermath. Machiavellian thinking involves strategic awareness. After you've handled a shame attack, watch how people respond. The person who tried to shame you will either back off, recognizing they've met resistance, or they'll escalate. If they escalate, you now know they're deeply invested in controlling you, and you can plan accordingly. Others watching will have seen how you handled yourself. You've just communicated volumes about your character and strength without saying a word about those qualities. The social proof element matters tremendously in shame dynamics. When someone shames you publicly, they're banking on social proof working in their favor. They expect others to either join in or silently agree, which amplifies your shame. But social proof can work both ways. When you handle a shame attack with composure, intelligence, and strength, witnesses often shift their allegiance. They respect strength. They're drawn to people who can't be easily rattled. Your response to shame becomes a display of social value rather than a loss of it. Psychologist Jonathan Haidt, who studies moral psychology, notes that humans are deeply attuned to status hierarchies and dominance displays. A public shame attempt is a dominance display. The shamer is trying to lower your status and raise their own. If you crumble, they succeed. If you remain unshaken and expose the emptiness of their attack, You've actually reversed the status change. You rise, they fall. Everyone watching adjusts their perception accordingly. There's also the concept of costs and consequences. Machiavellian thinking always considers what behavior costs and what consequences follow. If someone shames you and faces no consequences, they'll do it again. They'll do it to others too. But if shaming you becomes uncomfortable, embarrassing, or costly for them, they'll think twice next time. You're not just defending yourself in the moment, you're training people in how to treat you going forward. This brings up an important ethical question. Is it wrong to use these tactics? Is there something manipulative about understanding shame dynamics and strategically responding? I'd argue that understanding how shame works and refusing to be controlled by it is fundamentally healthy and ethical. You're not attacking anyone unprovoked. You're defending your dignity and establishing boundaries. That's not manipulation, that's self-respect. Psychotherapist Nathaniel Branden, who pioneered work on self-esteem, emphasized that healthy self-esteem means honoring your own reality and maintaining your boundaries. When someone tries to shame you, they're attempting to violate your boundaries and impose their reality on you. Defending against that is appropriate and necessary. The Machiavellian approach simply makes that defense more effective by understanding the underlying psychology. Let's explore some specific scenarios. Imagine a family member who regularly shames you about life choices. Maybe it's about your relationship status, your career, your appearance, whatever triggers their need to put you down. Most people either explode in anger eventually or withdraw, both of which feed the dynamic. The Machiavellian approach might involve a calm, direct conversation. I've noticed you make a lot of comments about my life choices. I'm curious what you hope to accomplish with those comments. This isn't aggressive, it's asking for clarity, and it forces the family member to confront what they're doing, which they usually haven't examined. Or consider a workplace scenario where a colleague undermines you in meetings. They make subtle digs, question your competence, try to shake your confidence in front of superiors. The reactive approach is to either ignore it and let it build, or confront them aggressively. The Machiavellian approach involves documentation and strategic response. You might start noting these incidents. Then you might raise them calmly in the moment. John, this is the third time you've questioned my work without providing specific concerns. If you have feedback, I'm happy to discuss it properly. Otherwise, let's keep the meeting productive. You've just made the behavior visible and costly in front of the boss. Social media presents its own shame dynamics. Public shaming online can feel devastating because the audience is so large and permanent. But the same principles apply. People who shame others online are often seeking attention, validation, or discharging their own negative emotions. The Machiavellian response might be no response at all. Starve them of the reaction they're seeking. Or if you do respond, do so with such calm rationality that they look unhinged by comparison. I appreciate you taking the time to share your thoughts. I disagree, but I respect your right to your opinion. Then move on. Don't engage further. You've shown strength without escalating. Psychologist Jean Twenge has researched online behavior and narcissism extensively. She notes that social media amplifies certain human tendencies, including the desire to tear others down to build ourselves up. Understanding this removes the personal sting. That stranger attacking you online isn't really attacking you. They're working through their own issues, and you happen to be convenient. This knowledge creates emotional distance and makes the shame harder to land. There's also a long game aspect to Machiavellian thinking. You're not just handling one shame attack, you're building a reputation over time. Every time you handle a challenge with grace and strength, you're depositing into an account. Eventually, people know you're not an easy target. They go looking for easier prey. The person who consistently refuses to be shamed develops an aura, a reputation that precedes them and protects them. Malcolm Gladwell, in his exploration of human behavior, discusses the concept of tipping points, moments where accumulated actions suddenly create a new reality. Your consistent refusal to accept shame creates a tipping point in how people perceive and treat you. It might take time, but eventually, people stop trying. You've trained your social environment. Another critical concept is emotional contagion. Research shows that emotions spread through groups. If someone tries to shame you and you respond with shame, embarrassment, or anger, those emotions spread. Others feel the discomfort. The atmosphere becomes tense. But if you respond with calm confidence, that spreads too. People relax. They respect you. The shamer becomes isolated in their negativity. You've created an emotional environment where their tactic doesn't work. Let's talk about the recovery aspect. Even with perfect technique, shame attempts will sometimes land. You're human. Something will hit a vulnerable spot, and you'll feel that familiar contraction of shame. The Machiavellian approach includes recovery strategies. First, recognize what happened without judging yourself for it. You felt shame. That's a human response to a social threat. It doesn't mean you're weak. Second, separate the feeling from the reality. You feel diminished, but are you actually less valuable? You feel exposed, but did anything real change? Usually the answer is no. The feeling is intense but temporary and doesn't reflect reality. Third, analyze the attack. Why did it land? Was there truth in it that you need to address? Or did it simply hit an old wound, a pre-existing insecurity? Understanding why something affected you helps you prepare better for next time. Fourth, reconnect with your own assessment of yourself. What do you actually think about the thing you were shamed for? Not in reaction to the attack, but in calm reflection. If you made a mistake, own it and learn from it. If you didn't, if the shame was unjustified, remind yourself of that. Your internal reality matters more than anyone's external attack. This is what psychologists call self-validation, and it's a crucial skill for shame resilience. Machiavellian philosophy also emphasizes adaptability. What works in one situation might not work in another. With some people, direct confrontation is effective. With others, subtle deflection works better. With still others, complete indifference is the answer. The key is reading the situation and the person accurately. Developing this skill takes practice and attention. There's one more crucial element we need to address. Sometimes, the shame comes from within. You're your own worst shamer. No external technique will help if you constantly shame yourself. This is where Machiavellian external strategies meet internal psychological work. Dr. Kristen Neff's research on self-compassion shows that treating yourself with the same kindness you'd offer a good friend dramatically reduces shame's power. When you stop shaming yourself, others' attempts to shame you lose their anchor. They have nothing internal to latch onto. The ultimate Machiavellian move against shame is building a life where external validation matters less and less. Not because you don't care about people, but because your sense of worth comes primarily from within. You know your values, you know your efforts, you know your growth. Someone's opinion, especially someone trying to tear you down, becomes just noise. Interesting, perhaps, sometimes useful if there's legitimate feedback, but not capable of shaking your foundation. This is the paradox at the heart of handling shame. The more you can be truly affected by it, the less it actually affects you. When you know shame is just an emotion, a social tool, a temporary feeling that will pass, it loses its teeth. You can observe it, work with it, and not be controlled by it. You become what Stoic philosophers called anti-fragile, not just resistant to shame, but actually strengthened by attempts to shame you. Each one is practice, each one teaches you something, each one confirms your growing immunity. If this video helped you see the hidden forces shaping your life, give it a like and share it with someone ready for this journey. Subscribe for more content exploring the depths of psychology and the path to authentic living. To the person who tries to shame you, you become a mystery, someone who doesn't play by the expected rules. They attack, and instead of the satisfaction of watching you crumble, they get calm engagement, or even indifference. It's confusing to them, it's frustrating, and eventually, it changes how they see you. You've destroyed their weapon, not through aggression, but through understanding and mastery. That's the Machiavellian way. Not cruelty, not manipulation, but strategic understanding of human nature, and the wisdom to use that understanding in defense of your own dignity and peace.